We're going to take a quick look at this Minolta SRT 200 35mm film SLR camera body. I know this camera fairly well because when I was a teenager I used a Minolta SRT 201 quite extensively, and my grandfather had the SRT 200, which was just like this one. And the cameras are very similar. They're both very solid, all mechanical cameras, descendants of the famous SRT 101, originally introduced 1966. The difference between the 201 and the 200 are primarily two things that I am aware of. The 200 does not have a self-timer, and the 200 also, when you look through the viewfinder, you cannot see what the shutter speed is. In the 201 there was a display along the bottom, mechanical thing, that when you turned this dial you could see what the shutter speed is, and you can't on this one. Otherwise they are basically the same as far as I can tell. And I thought what we'd do is just test this one out to make sure it's mechanically sound. So we're going to set it here at 1/1000th of a second and just step down through all the shutter speeds. So here's 1/1000th, here's 1/500th, here's 1/250th, and 1/125th, 1/60th, 1/30th, 1/15th, 1/8th, 1/4 second, 1/2 second, and 1 full second. Very strong, I think, on these slow speeds. So it indicates this is in quite good condition. The mechanism is all still working properly. Let's listen to 1 full second once more. And then we go to the bulb setting, where the mirror stays up and the shutter stays open. As long as I hold the button down, we can see back to the pressure plate there. So the shutter seems to be working just great. Let's check the aperture follower ring on these. Sometimes these tend to get stuck. This one is very free and springs back, so you won't have any problem with the meter coupling to that. I verified that I could mount a Minolta lens on here and that the lens mount is works properly, and the release button works properly. The stop down preview button does what it's supposed to do here. If we look here on the top, on the shutter speed dial here, we also have where we set the film speed. It's labeled ASA, and younger people these days will think of it more as ISO, but it's the same number, so you just enter that on here. And the film crank is all metal, really nice condition and nice design. Just cosmetic note here, I see a little scrape. It's dented in the metal just a little bit right there, right below the serial number, so we can see that. Purely cosmetic. Let's pop open the back. Okay, so now we can watch the shutter operating here, and we can see the shutter's working properly as well as the film advance over here. And if I were to push the film release button on the bottom, then this wheel is free to go backwards. And then once this is advanced again, the button pops out and it will not go back again. So the rewind release button's working properly. If we look over here on the door, the pressure plate looks good. I feel a little bit of very dried old residue from the light seals. Not much here, a little bit out here. And looking in the channels there, it looks like the seals are old, and at some point they probably need to be replaced. I can't say that they would absolutely need it before the next roll of film, but at some point they probably should be. The back closes. The bottom looks pretty good. A little bit of hunting and pecking for the tripod socket, looks like here. Most cameras have some scratching around that, and this one does too. Here's the on-off and battery check switch, and I verified that this works, and the meter is responsive to light. I did not check it for accuracy, and one thing about this camera is that the battery that is typically sold today, that is the right size to fit it, has just a slightly different voltage than it did back when these cameras were designed, and you need to deal with that some way or another. Some people do it by changing the ASA value a little bit or other settings a little bit. Some people have the meters calibrated for the new voltage, and some people adapt them to use more common batteries that are close enough to the original voltage. So just be aware of that. Except for that battery voltage issue, the Minolta SRTs, when they're working, are fantastic cameras, and I can attest to that from my years of use.